Good morning. I'm Lerato, host of Capital Alchemy. Today I'm joined by James Quarmby. Kindly introduce yourself, James, to our audience.
Good morning to you. Good to be here. I'm James Quarmby. I'm a private client partner in the international law firm of Stephenson Harwood. I specialise in tax, cross-border, and I commentate quite a lot on the issue of tax policy in the UK.
Thank you for making the time to come and have a chat with us. Interestingly enough, I would like for us just to start and talk about who James is and 25, 30 years in the industry, what you've been doing and your growth.
Oh, blimey, how long have we got? I guess to explain a little bit, I went into the law after doing finance and economics. So there's a backdrop in my education on economics. And as you know, tax is an economic lever. It's part of economic policy. So being a tax lawyer means I have a kind of direct interest in the economics and the tax policy behind it. So my day job, if you like, is looking after clients, advising them on their tax situation, particularly for foreign clients who are present in the UK or UK clients who are trading or investing abroad. But as I've got a bit older and a bit more confident, I guess, I'm more willing to express an opinion on the direction of tax policy in the UK and also trying to shape it as well to make sure that we don't bring in poor tax policy. So that's really why I end up doing things like this, because there is an opportunity for people that speak up to try and influence tax policy to make sure it works for everyone. That's for the government and for the taxpayers.
I'm glad you mentioned tax policy because, interestingly, we've seen that now with the Labour in Parliament right now, we've seen that there are now tax increases and there's changes to it. Yeah. Your sentiments around it?
Well, every government since the Second World War, every new government since the Second World War has increased taxes in its first year of administration. And there's a simple political reason for that. If you're going to do something unpopular, do it at the beginning of your administration, and you hope that by the time the election comes around in 4 or 5 years' time, people have forgotten about it. So, of course, taxes will go up. And I think we all have to accept that. And I'm not going to be ranting against them putting taxes up. What I want them to do is to do it in a sensible way, which doesn't lead to a counterproductive result. And that's where I think we're possibly heading with the policy on the non-domicile taxpayers in the UK.
I'm glad you said in a sensible way. And do you foresee them doing it in a sensible manner, or are they just going to rip off the Band-Aid?
Yeah, I feel that there's going to be some Band-Aid ripping going on, frankly. I have hope. I'm not sure I have expectation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the good news is that we've got an economically literate chancellor. We've actually got a chancellor who studied economics and has worked in the Bank of England. So that's really positive, you know. On the other hand, this is the first Labour government for 14 years, and there's a lot of pressure on her to deliver on public services, and that requires putting taxes up. So she's got to weave her way between those competing priorities. She's got to raise money, she's got to balance the books, she's got to deliver good tax policy, and at the same time keep the unions happy, keep her own party happy. It's not a job I would want to do. I wish her luck, but I hope she does it properly.
The one constant that you are talking about is that obviously as a Labour person, you need to make sure that the unions are happy, and you need to make sure that the policies or manifestos that you have been now promoting are now being implemented, but also ensuring that you don't rock the boat too much, especially with the Liberals or the other people being surrounded.
Yeah.
You touched on non-dom.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that policy.
Yeah.
What it is, what it's meant to be, and what they're trying to achieve.
Well, so the non-dom tax regime came in around about 1790. So it's been around for a long time in the UK. And it's not it's not unique because actually a lot of countries behave in a similar way. But it's been pared back and pared back and pared back to where we are now, which is a system where people pay a fee in order to keep their foreign profits from being taxed. That actually brings in quite a lot of money. So if you look at the non-dom cohort of taxpayers in the UK, between them, they pay about 12.4 billion in tax. So it's quite a lot. And there aren't that many of them. It's about 68,000 people. So the average non-dom pays about 15 times the amount of tax of the average Brit. So the idea that there are these sort of wealthy foreigners coming over here to the UK and not paying their fair share is just false.
Okay.
So what Labour wants to do is squeeze some more money out of them. But if you squeeze too hard, what happens is that the people you're squeezing will say, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm going to go. Now, Labour's been in opposition and has had this policy for some time, which is we're going to abolish the non-dom system because it's unfair. Why should we treat foreigners any better than our own citizens? And that has some moral weight to it. If it was just a moral question, you'd say, well, I totally agree with you. Why should foreigners not pay the same taxes the locals? Surely they should contribute more. But you can't make tax policy just based on, morality, because if you did, you wouldn't achieve anything. So you have to squeeze them gently. And I think what the Labour Party is planning to do is to throttle them.
And throttle them meaning that they will exit, and therefore you are losing that 68,000 people that are contributing way more than your local.
You won't lose all of them. And no one's suggesting. I'm not saying we're going to get killed in the rush at Heathrow Airport. There's like a whole wave of non-doms trampling over you to run onto planes and get out the country. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen. But when you look at the cohort of non-doms, which is like 68, 70,000 people, I think it's gone up recently, actually. What's really important is to look at the ones that are rich enough to pay the remittance basis charge, which is this 30,000, 60,000. That gives you an idea where the real money is. And that's fewer than 10,000 people. So if those 10,000 people left, the problem is that up to half of the income that we get from non-doms could leave as well. Because if you look at the general population of taxpayers, 10%, the top 10% of taxpayers generally in the UK are responsible for 60% of the income tax collected. And the top 1% are responsible for 30% of the income tax collected. So it's not about non-doms leaving, the number, it's who. If the wrong non-doms leave, it could be an utter disaster for Labour. Now, what's going to drive them to leave? We've got three main taxes in the UK: income tax, capital gains tax, and inheritance tax.
Yeah.
The one that's going to send them offshore is inheritance tax. And that's what we're urging Labour to think again and to provide some protection for the non-doms who've created trusts in the past under the current rules. If they brought all those trusts into the charge of inheritance tax, pretty much all my clients would go.
I'm actually glad that you touched on inheritance tax because I'm very big on wealth structuring and inheritance tax. So let's talk about where inheritance tax is currently and where they are looking to move it to.
So most advanced countries have inheritance tax. We have it. We're unusual in the UK in that we have a 0 rate of inheritance tax and a 40% rate and nothing in between. And the 40% rate is high by international standards. So when you look at a lot of other countries, they have very graduated rates of inheritance tax, and you will eventually get to a top rate approaching 40% and in some cases more. But the effective rate of tax is often lower because the rate of tax is affected by not only the amount inherited, but also the relationship of the inheritor to the deceased.
Yes.
So, for instance, in France, there's a lower rate of tax applied between parents and children than there are between, let's say, cousins or strangers. So the inheritance tax regime we've got is quite harsh. And you're straight into 40% after £325,000. So for wealthy clients, that's a worry because they just want to leave money to their children, essentially, which is understandable. But they don't want 40% of it to go to the state. Particularly, we're talking about foreigners here who have often built up a huge amount of wealth before they come to the country. So then we're back to a moral issue, which is why should the UK take 40% of the wealth of an individual when that individual built up the wealth outside of the UK, not enjoying any of the UK's public services or anything? So let's say I come into the country with $20 million. Well, I've earned that abroad. Why should I pay tax? There comes a point where clients say, well, I'm just not accepting that. So either I won't come to the UK or I'm just going to leave. And that's the problem. And the thing is, when it comes to tax policy, why are we obsessing over inheritance tax? It brings in 9 billion. That's less than 1% of the entire tax take of the UK. Where we should be focusing our efforts, and this is what my message is to Labour, by all means, change the system for income tax and for capital gains tax. That's where all the action is. It's income tax, VAT, capital gains tax, corporation tax. IHT is a complete non-entity for tax. It's 0.8% or whatever, So by trying to increase the IHT take, what you're doing is sending people away who would otherwise bring in a lot of income tax. So I'm saying the priority is wrong. Leave inheritance tax alone. And to answer the other part of your questions, how does it work? For trusts, if you are non-UK domiciled and you create a trust, the trust is outside the inheritance tax net as long as the trust is foreign and has foreign assets. So it's back to that moral point for the clients is why should I pay UK inheritance tax on my foreign assets?
So in my context, because I'm South African.
Yeah, I can tell.
If my trust is South African.
Yeah.
And I've been living here for a few years.
Exactly.
It therefore is going to fall out of the scope.
Yeah. Well, this is a really interesting point about South Africans because the thing is South Africa is going to tax your trust as well because you've got donations taxes.
Because I'm listening to this whole thing and I'm thinking about this spiel of you guys are crying about 40% tax.
Yeah.
Our individual income tax goes all the way up to 45%.
Yeah.
And now inheritance tax, I think we are at 30, 36.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, you guys are crying about something that we have no choice about and are already, living.
But you're going to have a situation where you can have a South African tax on your trust in South Africa, and it gets dragged into inheritance tax net in the 100%. UK. So now we have a treaty between our two countries, which will mitigate that to a degree. But you can see that trusts are a big issue for clients because I think particularly for South Africans, because it's a country that recognises trusts and it is a normal part of estate planning. But if you're South African and you come to the UK, that's where the real issue is. And my argument is you just leave those alone. Just if you've got a South African trust, just leave it alone. Otherwise, clients are going to react, and they're going to react in a way which is going to lead to negative results for the UK Treasury, because these people bring in a lot of money, they employ people, they pay a lot of income tax. As I said before, 12.4 billion for 68,000 people is a lot. That's 15 times the amount of a normal British citizen. And whilst you can be morally pure and say foreigners shouldn't be treated in a special way, because we treat them in a special way, they actually pay us more tax. That's the thing that Rachel Reeves has got to grapple with.
This is quite interesting because I truly believe in being a global citizen and I believe in jurisdictions. And I'm trying to ascertain that even if we look at all the different jurisdictions, how do you feel about which jurisdiction is best? Not that I'm trying to say everyone should pack their bags and move out of the UK. Yeah. I'm just saying taxation-wise, then what are we looking at and what should we consider?
Well, I get asked this question a lot because clients are planning for contingencies now, which is, well, either I'm going to stay and try and rearrange my finances or my assets to mitigate what's coming in, or I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
So they're then asking, well, where should I go? Because leaving the UK is one thing. That's easy. You just get on a plane, and you don't come back. So leaving's easy, but the plane's got to land somewhere and you've got to live somewhere. So I'm not sending them to France or Belgium, for instance, or Germany.
Yes.
These countries have insanely high taxes. No one goes to France to save tax. No one goes to Germany to save tax. But there are a number of countries that are making themselves deliberately attractive to foreigners. And there are a number of countries that don't really have death taxes. I mean, Italy's an interesting one, and Switzerland doesn't really have much in the way of a death tax. And in the last 6 or 7 years, a number of countries have deliberately been selling themselves as having non-dom regimes. They're not non-dom regimes, but Italy's done it. Greece has done it. But the Greeks have had a retirement regime for a while where they say, well, just come to us and you'll pay 9% tax on your retirement income. We won't charge you an inheritance tax. And inheritance taxes in Greece are quite low. So actually there's quite a lot of competition. So there are countries with no inheritance tax. There are countries with very low rates of inheritance tax, or countries with inheritance tax that's easy to plan around by just creating trusts. There's a huge amount of choice. So what I'm seeing is in terms of Europe, it's Italy, Greece, Monaco, Switzerland. Some people are going for Cyprus or Malta. Again, no death taxes. Then it's Middle East. You can choose anywhere you like in the Middle East. Hardly any tax anywhere. And then you've got Asia. Most of Asia doesn't have inheritance taxes. Even the really big countries. There's a lot of choice, especially if you come from Asia. If you're Asian or Middle Eastern, and you're thinking, why should I be in the UK when I could just go back home?
That's very interesting, because therefore it means governments need to be taking into consideration that people do have alternatives.
Yeah.
And in a global world, people can just not physically pack up and move, but we know that taxation-wise, domicilia means economically moving as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially non-doms, right? Because they come from another country. So by definition, they have a choice.
Yes.
They can go back to where they came from. But also there's a danger that Brits will leave. I was talking to a lawyer on the island here yesterday, and he's got a friend who's a real estate agent, and he said that inquiries from Brits for property in Isle of Man has gone up 1,300% since the election. That's quite a staggering number. Now, I don't know what the sample size is, because it could be they only had one inquiry last year and they've now got 12. So I don't know what it is, but certainly people have got choices, and globalization means that those choices are wider. You can, if you're a hedge fund manager, all you need is a laptop and a phone, really, and a Bloomberg terminal, and you can do your job anywhere. You could be on a beach in the Bahamas, you could be in an office in Zug in Switzerland, or you could remain in your office in Mayfair in London, paying 45% income tax. And when Labour brings in the increased rates of tax on carried interest, that could be a real blow to London's private equity business as well. A lot of foreigners in there, but also a lot of Brits.
Interesting, because I think with COVID and also with the upgrade of technologies just made remote working and working from anywhere so much easier, and servicing your clients from any point.
For professionals, I mean, if you work in a shop, or McDonald's,
clearly you can't do that.
Can't do that from a beach in Bahamas. But people that are basically in the knowledge industry of whatever description, they're using their brains. They're connected. They could really do it from anywhere. Yeah, and during COVID, we saw, didn't we, that you could get digital nomad visas. So I think it was Barbados that started that game, and I thought it was quite imaginative. They said, "Come to Barbados." It wasn't Barbados; it was Bahamas, but pretty sure it's Barbados. Come to Barbados on a digital nomad visa, and you can do your work from home or work from the beach. and we won't tax you on the income that you earn. Now, I have no idea how many of those visas were taken up. It sounds like a really beautiful
that sounds
idea.
Attractive.
Yeah, I quite like that because, during COVID, of course, everyone was locked up in their homes, and you'd be arrested if you went out for more than just going to the shops or a walk. And sitting on a beach in Barbados, clacking away and going for a swim,
beautiful,
and earning tax-free dollars sounds great. So there are lots of options for people these days, and that's what the government over here needs to realise. I think there's a certain delusion amongst Labour that the UK is so amazing.
People won't leave.
They won't. It's just so amazing. It's just, we've got theatres and we've got look, newsflash, other countries have theatres and restaurants and culture. We're not the centre of the universe.
And better weather.
Look, we didn't even have a summer here. The summer lasted about 4 days, and I
heard that.
Yeah, and I was out of the country in those 4 days. So basically, I've had no summer. The UK is great, but it is not the best place in the world.
And it's not the only place.
No, it's not the only place. It's not the best place. But there's this delusional quality, some people in Labour, that it is so amazing. That's why all these rich people have come here. There's no way they're going to leave. That is delusional. People will go, and they will have a perfectly good life in another country, as you say, possibly with better weather. So we need to just wake up. We need to wake up that we are not the centre of the universe. We need to make our country attractive to investors. And if we make our country attractive to investors, we'll bring capital here. That will increase employment. That will increase GDP. That's where we need to go.
There's a resounding continuation of a theme here, making it attractive to investors.
Yeah.
I think even as South Africans as well, we are also saying, let's make it attractive for foreign investors to come and stay and invest in our country. And I'm glad to see that even throughout this year, I know 60% of the world has been going into elections.
Yeah.
And we are all saying the same thing because we've seen global inflation go up.
Yeah.
We've seen globally everyone's capital markets being affected. Thank you so much for this morning's talk. I'd like to save everything else for the rest of the evening, but is there anything else that you want us to know? Last comments.
Anything else I want you to know? God, not really. No, I just hope that our new government is sensible and careful with our tax base, because I want our country to succeed, and I believe that if the UK is successful, the Isle of Man will benefit from that as well. Most of the Isle of Man's trade is with the UK. Most of its goods and services come from the UK. They are intertwined and they're very important. You don't have our tax system over here in the Isle of Man, but what we do in the UK does affect. So I think we should all be interested in what the government is doing. And I do wish our government every success, and I hope they manage to achieve their objectives. I just want them to do it in a sensible, measured way so that, we can all benefit from it. And as for the rest of it, come along to talk tonight and you'll find out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.